Hello everyone, great morning to you. Welcome to the Joy Business Report. Coming up, government set to roll out 3 additional trade centers around the world to support Ghana's non-traditional exports. Also in this bulletin, Ghana cedi expected to remain relatively stable against the US dollar this week as risk of investor sentiment cools off. And we'll hear from the economist, Professor Peter Quartey, on lessons government can take regarding the second domestic debt exchange program. These and more shortly. Always a pleasure to have you on. I am Pius Kojobaka. Government is set to roll out 3 additional trade centers in targeted markets around the world before the end of this year. The move is part of several measures by managers of the economy to support growth of the country's non-traditional exports. Ifwa Sabiasare is Chief Executive of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority.
Looking at pitching our tent in every country that in markets, very strategic markets that we think will support the growth of the NTEs. We've started with Kenya, where we have the first Ghana Trade House. So this is where we consolidate the products of the exporters, especially those who want to export but in smaller quantities. We just consolidate everything and put it in the Export Trade House for onward distribution to the East African bloc. And it's doing quite well. Hopefully, we will be able to expand to other countries.
And what country are we looking at the next few years?
By the end of the year.
3 countries?
About 2 or 3.
Dr. Ifwa Sabiasare is the Chief Executive of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority in that interaction with George Yafit there. Now, the Ghana cedi is expected to remain relatively stable against the US dollar this week as risk of investor sentiment cools off. This is coming after the local currency lost 0.43% to the American greenback last week. There is more in this report.
Demand for US dollar continued to outstrip supply despite a slowing inflation. This caused the cedi to fall to levels seen in the second quarter of 2023. The central bank provided $20 million in the 36th bi-weekly foreign exchange auction to the bulk oil distribution companies. But this was insufficient to slow down the rising corporate demand. The local currency lost marginally to the US dollar last week. Conversely, it gained 0.17% to the pound, but remained stable against the euro. So far this year, the cedi has lost about 11.6% to the dollar in the retail market and about 22% to the American greenback on the retail market.
What a better time to talk about the cedi, and it is going for 11 cedis 53 pesos against the US dollar on the forex or retail market. It is still selling at 14 cedis 58 pesos to the pound. It's trading at 12 cedis 40 pesos to the euro. Now, the Ghana Association of Banks has cautioned the government to tread cautiously on the performance of bonds under the domestic debt exchange program. This comes after government announced that it is reopening the domestic debt exchange program, particularly for investors who didn't sign up in February this year. According to the Chief Executive Officer, John Iwa, a careful assessment of the performance of these bonds under the program is necessary for an access to the international capital market. He spoke.
Of course, there are significant repayments that will be due in the coming years, particularly the first maturity payment, and that will be the very clear test of commitments to the program. But as we know, the window for failing on this program is very, very small. Any kind of access going forward to the capital market is very much dependent on the success rate, particularly on the performance of the bonds under the program. So we are very hopeful that government, knowing the consequences of non-performance of the bonds under the program, will definitely continue just like they did in August when the first coupons were due.
John Iwa is the CEO of the Ghana Association of Banks. More on the domestic debt exchange program, senior finance lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Seriam Kawo, has urged the government to enhance engagements with members of the pensioner bondholders in order to ensure they sign on to the reopening of the domestic debt exchange program. According to him, government's mode of communication on the entire program had been problematic, hence the struggle to get the buy-in of investors. Mr. Kawo was reacting to the rejection of the second round of the DDEP by the Pensioner Bondholders Forum.
To get the pensioner bondholders come on board, there is a need for a meeting with them. That meeting should be done, and then we see the duration of their bond, and then listen to them so that they will also have some other options they will want to suggest to government in terms of the duration, in terms of the coupons, whether they are going to get it in time, and then see some of the expenses that they incur. If government could give them some of the coupons that are overdue, or if all of them have not been paid, those are overdue, government will pay them. That will go a long way to help.
Senior finance lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Sriram Kawo, and the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey, is urging government to avoid certain mistakes in the first domestic debt exchange program, which witnessed agitations from many think tanks. According to him, avoiding such errors will improve upon the performance of the second one, which was announced last week. It tells Joy Business government must do the right thing.
The major one is the limited or the lack of communication. The discussion has been very limited. Ghanaians were not much involved. Think tanks and all the key people that matter were not much involved in this DDEP. So there was not any initial evaluation, proper evaluation in my view. So you see something introduced, then a group will agitate, then they are exempted, another group will agitate. And if you have done the right kind of consultations, once you introduce it, it is seamless. But we didn't do that. And for me, that's one of the major problems. And when you are throwing in a policy that you are very inconsistent, today, policy inconsistency, you have this policy, you withdraw, then you modify, it doesn't speak well of you. You ought to do the consultations ahead of time.
Professor Peter Quartey is the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE. Now, stabilizing the cedi and bringing inflation under control will dominate discussions at the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana's meeting, which began yesterday. The meeting is happening at the time inflation for the month of August recorded a marginal reduction of 40.1%. However, Joy Business is learning that the Bank of Ghana would maintain its tight monetary stance to achieve price stability. The policy rate is currently pegged at 30%. The meeting will end this Friday with an announcement on Monday, September 25. Now, the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobnenim, has advised policymakers to carefully examine the various components of food inflation that is driving prices up. According to him, the data presented by the service gives enough pointers that could help Ghana improve food production for basic staple in high demand. Speaking to journalists, Professor Inim is of the view that Ghana could save a lot from imported food if policymakers pay attention to data published by the Ghana Statistical Service.
One of the items that contributed the most to the 51.9% inflation for food in August 2023 was cereal and cereal products. If you go into that subclass, the items that you find there is a mix of both locally produced items and imported items. You find rice there, and you find rice that is imported and rice that is local. You find maize there, you find sorghum there, you find millet there. So this is where the conversation should be. The conversation should not be at the headline figure, it's a reversal and that. It doesn't tell us anything from a policy point of view. The details are always in the items and the weight of the items, and the responsible ministries will be held responsible to ensure that we have stable prices for these items.
Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim there. You're still listening to the Joy Business Report. On Investor Eye today, if you suspect an investment arrangement to be a fraud, never go ahead to engage the company. Don't also provide any personal information to any suspicious investment company. Let's listen to the head of Technical IT and Digital Forensic at the Economic and Organized Crime Office, Amankwa Atta, as he provides some tips to avoid fraudulent investment schemes.
When someone feels they have received an investment message that could potentially be a scam, there are several steps they can take to protect themselves. 1. Do not respond to the message. Avoid engaging with the sender or providing any personal or financial information. 2. Research about the sender. Look up for the company or individual who sent you the online message. Check for any negative review or report of scam associated with their name. 3. verify the information. If the message claimed to be from a reputable organization or financial institution, contact them directly through their official line. 4. Watch out for red flags. Be on the look for common signs of investment scam, such as they offering you guarantee of high returns with little to no risk.
Head of Technical and IT Digital Forensic at Yoko Amankwa Atta there with today's Investor Eye. Before we wrap up, let's quickly go to the commodities market. Crude oil recorded another increase in price to $95 a barrel. Gold lost almost $3 and is selling at $1,930 an ounce. Cocoa dropped by a significant $136 to open trading at $3,621 a ton. And that's your Joy Business Report here on the Super Morning Show with the Superman, Kojo Yankson. Yeah.
With the what? The Superman?
Yeah.
I see what you've done there. All right. Well, Pius and the team return tomorrow with more. But right now it's time for us to get our inspiration on. Our inspirational song brought to us by Duraplast Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC and HDPE pipes. And Water Tank, where Duraplast goes, water flows. I've got a surprise for you, by the way, after this inspirational song, which happens to be by Victoria Orenze. It's called I Get Backing. Love it. Enjoy.
I get backing.